This is Inside the Log, practical, real-world radio fixes for small market radio stations who want to sound bigger, cleaner, and more competitive. Hi, I'm Steve Cannon with Hole in the Wall Media. And today we're going to break down why small market stations lose, and more importantly, how to fix it. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Well, let me tell you something. If you're on a small market station, I can tell you right now, you know that small market radio isn't broken. It's simply undercoached, it's under-strategized, and under-prioritized. Well, every day in my travels, I talk to various program directors, I talk to market managers, GMs, that are actually doing the best that they can with the resources that they have. And the truth is really simple. Most small market stations aren't losing because of their people. They're losing because of their systems. Well, you know what? Those systems actually can be fixed. So let's go ahead and break down the 3 reasons small market stations actually fall behind and what you as a leader can do to turn the tide. So the first one is small market stations don't have real clear programming strategy. They've kind of operate on what they've always done. Music logs, well, they get recycled. There's not a lot of attention to detail with the music logs. The imaging is old. When was the last time you updated your imaging? 2 years ago? A year ago? You need to take a look at that. And coaching, it gets pushed to actually when we have time for it. Well, you don't need to run your radio station on autopilot, and I know you really don't. Here's what you need to do. You need to build a really good programming plan. First off, a weekly music audit. That's right. You can pick any day that you want. You can pick a Friday, or you can pick let's say a Monday when you come in on Monday. You take a look at your rotations on the radio station. Make sure they are exactly the way you want them, that the powers are powers and the secondaries are secondaries. Secondaries aren't turning faster than the powers. You're playing songs long enough, especially if you're a current type radio station. If you're playing songs that are maybe 100 spins and then, you decide, well, it's coming off the station, it hasn't played enough. I can tell you that much. So what you want to do is make sure that your songs are spinning enough on the radio station so that the audience can actually hear them to decide if they like them or not. The other thing is a monthly imaging refresh. Go ahead and pick a day out of the month. It could be the first day of the month. It could be the last day of the month. And take a look at everything that you have in your imaging package and make sure it's up to date and it's fresh. This is really important as we get into going into the book, which is, about 6 weeks away. Also, a consistent coaching rhythm. You have a morning show. How often do you coach your morning show? Do you coach it every day? Well, I think you probably should. It doesn't have to take 3 hours to coach them. I mean, you can take 10 minutes. You can take a half hour. You can take them out to lunch. You can take them out to breakfast. You can do those types of things. And coach them, find out what's going on, and talk about the day's show, what happened today, and talk about what's coming up tomorrow. And you could do the same thing with the regular jocks. You could coach them, not necessarily once a day, but once a week. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. Also, a clear definition of your station's promise. Well, if you are the best mix, are you really the best mix? Good question, huh? So if you're saying that you're the mix, are you playing a mix of, say, rock songs, rhythmic songs, pop songs, alternative songs? If that's what your music mix is telling you to do, well, are you doing that? Or is it all globbed up? Is it all pop songs in one segment, all rock songs in another station? And are your jocks saying that? Are your jocks saying that we are the best mix? Well, you need to be able to do that, or the best variety, whatever your hook is. So when everybody's on the same playing field, when everybody actually knows the strategy behind the station, the product actually gets sharper. The other thing I want to talk about is talent actually isn't being developed. You in the small market, you know what? You guys have the new talent. You got the kids out of school, out of high school. You got the kids that want to start. Well, now's the time to be able to work with them. That's right, because they're young, they're hungry, they're full of potential, but actually they're rarely ever coached with any purpose. The only time they ever get an air check or talk to is when they do something wrong. Well, actually, you need to really develop them. That's right. So what you need to do is say, for your part-timer, your young person, is be able to do like a 10-minute coaching session. And what I do is I take a piece of paper and I draw a line in the middle of it. On the top part of it is all the things that I heard in the air check that they were doing right. Hey, you said the call letters first. You said the logo first. You identified yourself. You spoke cleanly. You spoke short. You didn't take 15 seconds to do something. You took 7 seconds. Then on the bottom half of that page, what I do is I write where they can improve. Hey, you know what? You need to be a little tighter going into the stop sense. You need to billboard, what music you have coming up, whatever it might be. That's something for them to work on during the next week. And then when we have our next coaching session, we take a look at that and we listen to the tape and we listen to what's going on. And hopefully those things, it could be 2, 3, 4 things, could be 5 things. Hopefully some of those things move to the top column. All right. And that shows that they've improved. Hopefully those things that are in the top column don't end up in the bottom column. So, that's how you do it. You both agree on it. You get a copy of it. Your air talent gets a copy of it, and off they go. So you both bring the copies with you the next week. It's a great way to coach somebody so they have a clear expectation of what you're looking for. Now, remember, great talent actually isn't found. It's built. That's right. Great actors, aren't necessarily found. They're coached. So that's the thing to keep in mind. One of the other things we want to talk about is leadership is actually stuck in survival mode. And you're probably sitting there going, yeah, that's probably right. You're sitting there juggling budgets. You got sales pressure on you. You got staffing shortages, corporate expectations. It's really easy to slip into, we just need to keep the lights on. That's what we need to do. But you know what? Survival mode actually kills momentum. It keeps stations reactive instead of proactive. So here's what you need to do. You need to shift from putting out fires to building systems that actually work. Now, remember, you don't need to put in more hours in the day. You need to work efficiently and have better framework. So, in other words, for the programmers, a weekly programming checklist. It's nice to have. What you can do is you set up the week and say, all right, I have these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, number of things I need to do this week, and you check them off as you get them done. At the end of the week, you look at that and say, hey, I got them all done. What I like to do is move them from A's to B's. Programmers understand that. A's are powers and B's are secondaries. So, and maybe even a C category. So A's are things that I must get done. I have to get these things done. B's are things that I really need to work on and I'd like to get done. And C's are the things that you would really like to get done if you have time for it. That's always a really good idea. Also have a monthly content review. Let's see what's going on. Let's go ahead and see what content we're talking about. Let's make sure that our websites are up to date with the proper content. Let's make sure our jocks are up to date with the proper content. That is something that you need to sit back and look at. Also, a quarterly brand reset. Well, it's like, what's that? Well, a quarterly brand reset is at the end of the quarter, let's take a look at where we have been. You might have ratings in that particular quarter that you can look at. You can see where your radio station is doing well or where your radio station needs to improve, maybe better time spent listening, maybe a weak morning show. You want to take a look at where you're at right there. And you want to create a culture of clarity and communication. I know, radio is the way it is. Radio is in the communication business, but boy, oh boy, we're the worst communicators. You need to try and be able to work on that. Remember, small market stations actually win when leadership actually stops chasing those fires, those problems, and starts really designing solutions. All right. So the bottom line out of all of this is small market radio has every advantage that big markets don't. And you know what? I've worked in both of those situations in markets like Wausau or Terre Haute, Indiana, or Evansville, Indiana, or in places like Tallahassee, Florida, or just smaller markets like that. I've also worked in big markets, put in years in Indianapolis and Milwaukee and Memphis and Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. Radio is radio, but you know what? When you're in the small market, you have a little bit more flexibility. You can try things out. You can step outside the danger zone and do things. Where inside the major markets, one misstep could catch your ratings, and one misstep could lose you a lot of money. So in a smaller market, you have that flexibility to be able to do stuff. You also can really establish a community connection. Do you have the mayor on? If you're in a town, a small town like a Terre Haute, do you have the mayor on once a week in your morning show? You know, that's something to do. And I'm not talking about they have to talk politics. They're talking about things that are going on, positive things that are going on in the community. And especially in markets in the Rust Belt, in the Midwest, yeah, we look for positivity. And if the mayor has something very positive, there's a new Chipotle restaurant that's going to be built. They're going to have a Target, show up in town. He talks about that. You're the first to be able to have that. People look for that. And it's all local, and it's all the part of being local. It's something that other people really can't do. So, you really need to be able to have structure, and you need to be able to manage that structure. And when you have systems with inside of that structure, you're able to manage those a lot easier than running around with like a chicken with its head cut off. You know what I mean? So when you fix the system, what happens? Product improves. And when the product improves, well, guess what? The audience does respond. And guess what? When the audience responds and the ratings are humongous, well, hopefully the revenue follows with that. Remember, small market radio isn't losing because it's small. It's losing because it's simply unfocused. And really, quite honestly, it's fixable. And you know what? Small market radio doesn't need more excuses. It needs leaders that are willing to rebuild the systems that actually drive the audience and drive the revenues. And you know what? If you're in a small market, I'm sure you already feel this. And you know what? What I'd like to do is hear what your biggest challenge is right now. One thing that you think is holding your radio station back that nobody talks about, but you'd like to talk about it. Well, you can talk about it with me. You can drop it in the comments. And you know what? I'm actually building a series around the real world problems that guys like you, girls like you are actually facing. All right. Well, that's today's episode of Inside the Log. If you're ready to make your small market station a little sharper, a little more intentional, more competitive, just keep listening, all right? And connect with me on socials for daily real world radio fixes. My name's Steve Cannon, and I'm with Hole in the Wall Media. We'll talk soon.